Ron Dara asks, I would like to design a tartan for a very large organization that I belong to. He's not saying what organization.
Is it the
very
Sea Org?
suspicious? Or he's maybe a secret spy club. I don't know, but he does say it's a
fair.
very large group.
With no boys allowed. No girls allowed.
He says kilts are a tradition for this group.
It's a treehouse.
Could you have a discussion on this process? What does it take to get a custom weave done? Or custom weave design and made?
Sure. To get a custom weave designed, you find a tartan designer. Well, I'd say this: start with the symbolism and the colors that you want to include. So if the group has colors with particular meaning, start with that. If the group has numbers with a particular meaning, whether it's the year that they're founded, whether it's the year of the age of the group or whatever, or if there's an anniversary that you're trying to, that there's reason to hook it to, the more symbolism and meaning you can ascribe to it, the more it will speak to people. If you just say, hey, I designed a blue, green, and pink tartan for this group, it's not going to mean much. But if you can hook ideas and meaning to it, it's going to have broader acceptance. Start there. I would say, if you're going to design a tartan for a group, here's a few tricks in dealing with pipe bands. There's a thing called death by committee. So start with if you're going to have a committee, start with a small committee of an odd number, like 3 people, or a few people that you want to get some input from in the design process. Get what colors they think of when they think of your group, what numbers or what dates or what things have meaning within your group. So start there. Then play with the designs. And I would say start with looking at existing designs that you like or that the group likes, and say, like, if Royal Stuart is one, or MacDonald, or the American Dream tartan, or Scottish National, or whatever. Start with designs that you like the feel of and try to figure out why you like the feel of them. Is it because of the balance? Is it because of asymmetry? Is it because of a gradient effect? Is it because of the meaning of that tartan in your group is from Scotland, so you want to base it off of Scottish National? You have to find things that you want to hook into, and yeah. So start there, and kind of design it in that way, in that vein, and then play with it so you can be inspired by things. Every idea is stolen. Every idea started somewhere. There's no new original idea under the sun. So you start with an inspiration and you kind of move from that direction. Then you go to a website that has a tartan designer, usakilts.com. We have our own tartan designer. There's other ones that are out there. But you have your own color palette. You have the meanings that you have, kind of sitting down, and then you just kind of play with the different designs. The other thing I would say is, don't just come up with a design and say, yep, that's it on day one. Come up with a design and then let it sit. Save it wherever you go. Save it, let it sit, and come back to it in 3 days, in 4 days, and look at it again with fresh eyes and say, is this still as good as I remembered? I would also say maybe come up with 2 designs or 3 designs and sort of make them very, very, very different. Force yourself outside of the box. Don't get pigeonholed into, I like Scottish National, so I'm going to base my design on Scottish National and just change the colors and call it done. Do that and then say, okay, well, maybe Scotland Forever. I like that tartan. Let's base some colors on that. Or American Dream, a tartan with a good gradient in it, and base your design on that. Come up with a few designs and see how you feel and see where it leads you. Then when you're ready to bring it to the group, I would say this, again, back to the death by committee. Don't bring one tartan, because then you're going to have 100 people's input. Don't bring 10 tartans, because you're never going to get a consensus. Bring at most 3. Bring 2 or 3 tartans to the group and see if there's a direction that the group wants to go, or to a small committee of 3 to 6 people. And then, go with it from there. But by the time you get to the bigger group, you don't want to have more than one or two. If it's going to be a group vote, you don't want to have more than one or two for the group, or two to three for the group to vote on and say, yes, this is the one or that's the one. And then you just go majority rules. But you don't want it to languish in hell or purgatory that is group by, or death by committee. Sorry, that was a very, very long-winded, comprehensive thought process, but
No, I mean you deal with this more than I do, so you've definitely got the more of the input. But a lot of what you're saying is a lot of things that you said you've run into. It's exactly that. It's too many people involved, and it just sits there and goes in the wash machine, just sits there and spins. It's nothing ever gets moved. But yeah, like any piece of art, like you said, do one, do another one. You completely erase that palette and start over again, and you're gonna find things like, ooh, I kind of like that now. Ooh, now I kind of like this, and then you start combining some of those elements together. Now you've come up with something else. And just remember, everything's Blackwatch in the end. So.
Yes, everything is Blackwatch. The other thing that kind of jumped out at me when you're looking at the symbolism, you want to collect as much data and as much input in the colors and in the meanings as you can, but ultimately, the design has to be good. So don't feel the need to include every single person's little bit of thing in the design. If you have 15 colors that everyone has put in their 2 cents and you end up with 15 colors, you're not going to be able to get 15 colors into a design. You want to stick to like 6 or 7 max. And even 7 kind of can limit you to where things can be woven. So really 6 is about the maximum number of colors you want to put in a design. And you don't want to have too much meaning, because again, you're kind of gilding the lily, and it's like, all right, buddy, enough with all this symbolism. You want to have enough for it to mean something. You want to have the key components for the thing, but you have to boil down all of the input. And ultimately, one person has to be the one to say, okay, well, this one color is kind of the outlier and doesn't work with the rest of the design. And if I try to include turquoise into this otherwise, very somber or whatever design, it throws off the balance entirely. Don't sacrifice a good design for one random color. Using my most recent personal example, when we were designing, Eric and I designed the Nordic Heritage tartan. One of the colors that Eric really wanted to incorporate in, and we actually had thread samples of a particular shade of purple that was made by the lichen in Norway, or I think it was Norway, but it was a particular dye that they would use. I'm like, we should try to include that color purple in the design. That would be a really cool element to kind of have a twist on it and include it in the design. It means something. We tried a couple different ways to get purple into the design, but none of it felt right with the rest of the design, and the rest of the design felt very good. So we didn't want to sacrifice the overall design just to shoehorn in one color and feel like we were forcing it in there when it didn't work. Ultimately, it's an art. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And you can't feel bad. You can't hamstring yourself in designing the tartan. It has to work together. You want to incorporate symbolism, but not so much that it just kind of loses all meaning. And you don't want to hamstring yourself by saying it has to be based on this and limit your ability to change things up and limit your ability to have a good design. When I did stuff with Piper Alley, originally it was adopted, and her adoptive father was a Duncan. And she wanted to base her design on the Duncan tartan because that was a good nod to her family, her adoptive family. But when she started playing around with it, it's a very, very simple kind of design, and it just didn't work, and she wasn't feeling any of it. So she eventually just said, look, we got to go a different direction. I can't have my design based on Duncan because it's not part of my brand. It's not how I'm feeling about it. So we went a different direction. Ultimately, it's still tartan. She's still giving a nod to her adoptive family's Scottish lineage, but she didn't want to force it and end up with a design she wasn't pleased with just to have a design. So that's kind of where, this is a long-winded answer to a reasonably simple question, but I hope this kind of thing helps and helps you and other people who are trying to design their own tartan. Don't end up with a bad design based on trying to incorporate too many colors or too many numbers or whatever. The design is the thing that people are going to really, either love or hate. So incorporate some symbolism, but really focus on coming up with a good design. Yes, I hope that helps. So, have you ever wanted to try your hand at designing a tartan? If you want to put the advice I just gave to good use, go over to usakilts.com and check out our Tartan Designer. Sign up for an account so you can save your designs, but it's free and you can play around with creating a bunch of different tartans for a bunch of different things. Have a good time, guys.